If you're over 50 and feel like fat loss just isn't happening anymore, then this video is for you. Reason number one could be you're eating more calories than you think. Look at it logically. If you are a certain weight, it means that you are eating the perfect number of calories to be that weight. And if you're happy with your weight, awesome, keep it up. But if you're trying to lose weight, you'll have to lower your calories. And if you're thinking, I just can't lower my calories anymore, the truth is that most of us are delusional about how many calories we're eating if we're trying to lose weight. How can I say that? Well, first of all, in my other video, I discussed how nutrition tracking apps are off by as much as 25-27%. So if you think you're eating 2,000 calories per day, the truth is likely closer to 2,500. So that's just nutrition tracking apps. But also in another video, I talk about how legally nutrition labels in North America are allowed to be off by 20%. So if a food claims that it's 500 calories, more likely it's 600. Combine those two factors and it's easy to see how we could be off by as much as 50%. Case in point, I once had a client who started off at about 243 pounds and he dropped his weight down to 215, but still not quite where he wanted to be, which was 190. And I asked him, what do you think is the number of calories per day that you're eating? He said probably about 2,400, 2,500. Then I asked him, track your food for 4 different days. He tracked it, we added up the calories and found out he was eating 3,800 calories per day. So he was off by more than 50%. How could that be? Because of a number of different reasons. Here's one interesting study that proved this case. In one metabolic ward study, 90 obese people were claiming not to eat very much and yet couldn't lose body fat. What did they do? What the researchers did is they put them into a metabolic ward. And again, what is a metabolic ward? A metabolic ward is a special hospital or research facility where everything a person eats, drinks, and does is carefully monitored. In other words, they don't have access to the refrigerator or cupboards at home. They don't have access to Uber Eats or Skip the Dishes. Everything is strictly controlled by the research staff. So when these people were asked, how many calories are you eating? The researchers then put them on that number of calories that they were claiming. What happened? In 1 week, they lost nearly 5 pounds. So they were eating way more than they thought they were eating. Again, we're just delusional, largely, about how many calories we're actually eating. So how can you know how many calories you're really eating? There are 2 methods, the lower accuracy method and the higher accuracy method. The lower accuracy method is just multiply your current body weight in pounds by 12 and add in exercise. That's approximately how many calories per day you're currently eating. And that's going to be correct within 10%. So if you counted 2,500, you might be between 2,250 and 2,750. That's the less accurate way. The more accurate way is a little bit more intensive and a little bit more extensive, and that is to not use nutrition tracking apps because they are off, as you learned earlier. The most accurate way, unfortunately, is still old school and it's a bit laborious. Here's how it works. First, figure out which food are you eating and look it up in a nutrient database. Multiply that by the serving size. A serving size needs to be weighed. Your eyes are not calibrated. Don't you use your eyes to predict serving size. Weigh the food you're eating. You don't have to do this forever and ever, just for about 1 or 2 weeks until you have an understanding. This is what 3 ounces looks like. This is what 4 ounces looks like, and so on. That will give you a much better, clearer picture of exactly how many calories you're eating in a much tighter range, probably within 2 to 5%. The second reason why you might not be losing body fat despite doing what seems like it's the right thing is that maybe the calories aren't registering. And I mean in your mind, not in your body. They're definitely registering in your body, but they're not registering in your mind. Why might that be? Well, very often we're eating mindlessly or we're snacking mindlessly. How many times are we watching TV and just eating popcorn, nuts, or something else? Very, very often. Or how many times are we preparing food for somebody else and just sampling little things here and there? How many times do we eat standing up, not really thinking about what we're doing? How many times are we eating, but at the same time watching TV, scrolling through our phone, etc.? All these things, when we're doing that, your brain is registering eating as something else. If you're scrolling while eating, your brain isn't registering that as I'm eating. Your brain is registering that as I'm scrolling. So it's not registering the food. So in your brain, there's like a vague memory of eating and not a concise memory. If when you're eating, you just eat, your brain records that as a distinct event. If your brain records that as a distinct event, there's a concrete memory of eating. It shuts down snacking related behaviors, mindless eating, etc. All these calories don't really register in our brain Of course, like I said, they don't register in the brain, but they certainly register in your body fat levels. Reason number 3, why you may have a hard time losing body fat despite eating what you think is healthy, is maybe you're eating natural foods. Maybe you're eating avocados, maybe you're eating olive oil, maybe you're eating nuts, almonds, cashews, pistachios. Just because they're natural doesn't mean they're low calorie. Yes, they're natural and high calorie. They're not mutually exclusive. There is something called the naturalistic fallacy, which means that if you think it's natural, therefore it must be good. It can do no wrong, but it absolutely can do wrong. All these foods I just mentioned, olive oil, nuts, avocados, they're good for you in the right quantities. Unfortunately, if we have excess body fat, we're not eating the right quantities. We have to eat the right quantities of them. There's a caloric budget that we need to meet, and that's the upper limit. If you like this information, I have a newsletter with lots more information just like this, full of videos exclusive to these newsletter subscribers. They are not posted on YouTube. They're exclusive to you. If you want to register for this newsletter, click on the link in the description below, and that'll take you to a page where you can subscribe for that newsletter. You always have the option of unsubscribing. Reason number 4, why you're having a hard time losing body fat despite doing what you think is right, is simply you're not burning enough calories through activity. Now, yes, you might even exercise, but even that's not enough. If you're sedentary outside of that, that might mean you're not burning active amounts of calories. And so what's the secret? It's not necessarily more exercise, but it is more movement that's not purposeful exercise. And that's called NEAT, N-E-A-T. That stands for non-exercise activity thermogenesis. These are small things you do throughout the day that burn calories. For example, walking around the mall isn't exercise, but it burns calories. Gardening is not exercise, but it burns calories. Walking 10,000 steps per day, contrary to popular belief, is not exercise, but it burns calories. These are all little things you can do to increase your caloric burn throughout the day. One of the most difficult parts of fat loss is the integration of exercise and nutrition. Do you want to know the best approach to fat loss over 50? I created a very thorough video about that exactly. Check it out right here.